My name is Emily Carter, and the day I turned 18, my father smiled, hugged me, and told everyone how proud he was of me. What he didn't know was that 30 minutes before my birthday party started, I had already signed the documents that made me the legal owner of everything my grandmother left behind: the lake house, the investment accounts, and nearly $2 million were safely locked inside a trust that nobody in my family could touch. The next morning, my father and my uncle walked into the county office expecting to transfer the property into their names, but instead, they were told something that turned their faces completely pale. "Sir, this property hasn't belonged to your parents for years." Everything they had planned collapsed in seconds. But to understand why that moment mattered, you have to go back 6 years. Every summer, my grandmother took me to a small wooden cabin beside a quiet lake in northern Michigan. She always said, "A home isn't measured by its price. It's measured by the memories it protects." While everyone else in my family talked about money, she taught me how to repair old fences, clean gutters, plant flowers, and take care of things that couldn't be replaced. My father rarely visited unless he wanted to talk about selling the land. My uncle, a real estate broker, constantly reminded everyone how much developers were willing to pay. They never saw a family home, they saw a paycheck. As I grew older, I noticed the conversations becoming more serious. Whenever my grandparents left the room, my father and uncle whispered about property values, taxes, and buyers. My grandmother noticed too, but she never argued. Instead, she quietly hired an attorney and created an irrevocable trust without telling anyone except her lawyer. Years later, after both my grandparents passed away, my father believed everything automatically belonged to him. He even found a buyer willing to pay nearly $500,000 for the lake house before checking who actually owned it. They assumed I was just an 18-year-old girl who wouldn't understand legal paperwork. They promised me $50,000 if I agreed to sign away my rights. They called it generosity. I called it manipulation. 3 months before my birthday, my grandmother's attorney contacted me and explained the truth. My grandparents had planned everything years earlier because they knew exactly what would happen after they were gone. They trusted me because I had loved the cabin long before I understood its value. On the night before my 18th birthday, while everyone downstairs celebrated and talked about selling the property, I quietly signed the final acceptance documents. The next morning, before my father even left the house, my attorney recorded my legal interest with the county. By the time my father and uncle arrived to file their paperwork, it was already over. Their documents were rejected immediately because the property had legally belonged to the trust for years. My uncle had even signed a sales contract for land he never owned. That mistake cost him tens of thousands of dollars, lawsuits from the buyer, and eventually his real estate license. My father came home angry, blaming me for destroying the family, but I reminded him of something my grandmother once told me. People don't lose families because of money. They lose families because they choose money over people. Those words changed everything. Weeks later, my father admitted he had made terrible choices. My uncle disappeared from our lives after facing legal problems of his own. My younger sister visited the cabin for the first time without anyone arguing about selling it. We sat on the porch watching the sunset exactly the way our grandparents used to. In that moment, I realized I hadn't won anything. I had simply kept a promise. Some people inherit money. I inherited responsibility, memories, and a place filled with love. Looking back, I understand why my grandparents trusted me. They didn't leave me the cabin because I was their favorite. They left it to me because I was the only one who saw it as home instead of an investment. And if there's one lesson this story taught me, it's this. The greatest inheritance isn't wealth. It's the wisdom to protect what truly matters before someone else decides its price.